For those maybe watching or listening to this outside of Ireland, Ryan Tubridy is one of the most famous men in the country and hosts a long-running and insanely popular Late Late show. In a very open and honest discussion, Ryan talks about fame, politics, his passion, his new children's book, The First Christmas Jumper, and more. I'm Mike Sheridan, and this is The Delve. Ryan Tubridy.
Well, here we are.
Here we are. Thanks
Nice
so
to
much.
see you.
Thanks so much for your time.
We've spoken a few times, but
We have.
you were on the other side
I was,
talking
yeah.
mostly about McGregor and MMA and all sort of things. So now I'm your victim. So I'm curious to know how this goes. But thanks for asking me.
Well, you've always been very nice. I always enjoyed doing your show.
Well, I mean, look, the way it is that it should be a conversation, isn't that it?
That's it, yeah.
If it becomes an interview with a list of questions, that the listener or the viewer, they just know that. Obviously, you've got a guide where you want to go, but it can be incredibly obvious that you're just going, right, you are here to do this, So that's why the next little while we're going to be together, I know nothing that you're going to ask me, and I think that's the way it should be. That's my favorite type of interview.
Yeah, no pre-interview or any of that
Absolutely,
crack.
no, none of that. Sometimes you have to, that's the nature of the job. But like, here we are. So I'm yours, go for it.
Okay, so I know you've a deep interest in American politics.
Yeah.
So we're recording this on the Wednesday after the primaries
Yes.
in the US. They were last
Yeah.
night.
Yeah.
Were you up all night watching them?
I was up for a lot of it because you're right. I'm not really a sport Billy, but this is my sport. And so this would be like the FAI League of Ireland sort of compared to the Olympic Games because it's a midterm, so it wouldn't be quite as enormous to me as these things, but it's my equivalent of sport. So yeah, I would be watching it very closely. So what did we get out of last night? Essentially, the Senate has stayed with the Republicans and they've gained a few seats, and the House has gone back to the Democrats. The glorious thing about the result is that it means that the checks and balances are back in the Constitution. It's fair
to some degree.
when
anyway,
when one party runs the whole point, that runs everything. That defeats the point of checks and balances because there's no checking or no balancing. So at least we have that. I think it was a good night for Donald Trump because they kept and gained in the Senate, and also the damage the Democrats did in the House wasn't I don't think as enormous as it could have been for Trump as it was against, say, Obama once upon a time. So I think Trump is well placed for 4 more years.
What do you think about the reaction to Trump for somebody who's got a deep interest in politics? And I know it's something you put to your guests on the Late Late Show and on the radio a lot too, because there's a hyperbolic reaction to him either way, and in many ways it's warranted.
Great word, hyperbolic, because that is the word of this last couple of years since he got office. Exaggeration, hyperbole, anger, rage. Ragegasms, one of my favorite words, that people who wake up feeling ragegasmic and they're looking around going, I want to rage against something. Quick, anything. Give me a lash. I need a backlash. And that sort of thing is really divisive, and it's kind of lent to a darkening of the mood on the globe. I mean, this is not just an Irish issue. And then, Trump has let this sort of genie out of the bottle. And I won't say whether it's a good or a bad genie, because that's not, that dismisses those who think it's a good genie. So I'm not going to talk about baskets of deplorables because that's too judgmental and it's too pontificating. But he's let a genie out of the bottle, and I just wonder about the nature of discourse, which has stopped being civil. Online is now a circus for cruelty, and I think that's really sad, because I think initially online, and I'm thinking of things like Twitter, particularly, was just a really interesting house party, and then the guys with the really nasty cans of beer came along.
I've said this before, and for somebody who's not affected by his policies or whatever, and some people would say he's kind of centre-right.
Who?
Trump, yeah.
I'd say further beyond there. Go on anyway.
Yeah, but for me, kind of just from the outside looking in, it would seem to be the worst thing about him is it's kind of trolling, and he enables the trolling a little bit, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think that he tapped into a bunch of people who voted him in democratically. I'm always at pains to say this.
The college electoral, he won it.
The electoral college.
That's the game.
If it had gone the other way and Hillary won that, you wouldn't hear people saying, "Oh, but she only won," or you would, and you'd say, "Well, tough. A win's a win." So that's not the issue. But it's more just, as you say, he's enabling a language and an argument that to me is dangerous and destructive and divisive. And unless it's handled well, I think that it's only going to get darker and more dystopian. And it comes down to, back to what I just said a minute ago about civil discourse. We see it in this country. People just lash out and they start writing nasty things to people. And you just think, do you know what? Let's take a step back. Let's talk about it. Don't just go, your point is rubbish, you're rubbish, I hate you, and I hope all your children are thick. And you know, what I just said something in past, rather than saying, you know, can I ask you about your point? Because I don't really agree with you. Can we talk about it? That I'd much rather B than A.
I think that's an interesting part of it as well. Conversation's a huge part of it, and that's just something that happens less and less.
Yeah.
That if you, I know you've gotten backlash sometimes for certain guests you've had on the
Yeah,
Late
of
Late
course,
Show.
and against me or the guest and so on. That's the nature of the beast. Yeah.
But I mean, in my opinion anyway, you have to have certain people on. You might disagree with to challenge them. Maybe you know, see that point. It's not necessarily just a platform.
That's right.
For those people.
And this is what's so funny is that when you talk about the left and the right, they're both arguing for different reasons about, for example, freedom of speech. So you'll say, well, we're going to bring on this person who's maybe to the right. And the left-wingers will say, how dare you give this man a platform? And only the week before they will have been saying, but you have to put this left-winger on to give them the right to have the freedom of speech. So it's selective freedom of speech then. And you have to have figures on and to have debate and to air these arguments. And you can't just have one side all the time. So there's no particularly correct side in this discussion between the left and the right. They're just extremes, like scorpions in a tin sometimes.
Yeah, and I think
snapping at each other.
And people can't agree that conversation is important either because they're saying don't even talk to them, and I find that a little bit nuts. I mean, obviously depending on the person.
Yeah, and again, it comes back to the concern about online and the idea that people are just shouting at each other through the keyboard. And they just need to humanize their conversations. They need to be more in the real world and talk to people rather than just lashing out all the time.
And how aware are you of, I suppose, that backlash on any given point? Because you're hosting the biggest show in the country, probably the most famous person in the country. The show is live as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realize how nuts that is. And you compare it to the Jimmy Fallons and the Jimmy Kimmels, which is pre-recorded.
Or the Graham Norton,
which is a completely different kettle of fish.
Yeah, they're recorded in the evening and they cut out all the bits they don't like. And God, what a dream scenario. But we are live. It's on a Friday and it's 2 hours or thereabouts, and there is no delay. It's proper live. Like, good luck with that. I mean, if you knew me a little more off air, you'd know that I was probably a little less hinged than I appeared to be on air, because it does drive you crazy, the job, because it's such a pressure cooker. But in terms of your question about the backlash, I know it's there because I'm not stupid and I consume media, but what I don't consume is comments under the media. So I don't join the troglodytes, I will not read them. If they come near me on Instagram, I have found my safe space in Instagram. if they come near me and if I sniff negative, if I sniff mean, they're blocked. And that's not about, freedom of speech. I'm talking about people who are being cruel and gone. So I will listen to people I trust and I respect and who are civil, and the rest are toxic. And
I was just saying to you before we started rolling there, I think the Late Late's the toughest job in broadcast.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. Could you put that in a headline? Because I don't think anyone else knows that.
But I mean, by the nature of the show, and you've mentioned the live thing there as well, you've got such an array of guests coming over the course of those 2 hours.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That you have to rejig
your brain.
Or at any given point, you know, because that's just the nature of the show. It's a variety show, but it can get serious as well.
Of course. So look at last week's show. You begin with Mary Robinson, former President of Ireland, UN High Commissioner for Refugees, and we're talking about the climate change, shaking hands with Donald Trump, and veganism. That's guest one, right? 25 minutes of that. Stop. Here's a competition to win a prize to New York. Clunk. Stop. Here's Brezzy and two new fellas from Kildare that are fab. Clunk, bang. Here's Mac Williams talking about Slither Mums and all the rest of the new Irish characters. Clunk, bang. Dancing with the Stars. Here's Jennifer Zamparelli talking about sequins and stars and dancing. Blump, blank. Here's a big debate about Peter Casey and a big divisive discussion about the world. Clunk, plunk, goodbye. Like, you'd need a beer just hearing that running order, let alone doing it. But that is why I love it. It requires, almost, you just like, I walk a lot, I think a lot, and you need to be fit, I mean, I'm not fit, obviously, like sporty fit, but you just need to be on and conscious of it, because it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It would never fly now as an idea for a program.
Oh yeah, and I was just going to say that, but you're appealing to such a broad audience That at any given point you're thinking, you know, a million odd people watch the Late Late, not including the toy show and now the Valentine show as well, which is nuts on a yearly
But the London
basis.
show, for example, we did recently did massive business. The show we just finished.
People queuing outside to try and get in.
People queuing outside, and there was the issue there with the British company that was running that. But that's not the story. The story was 56% share. That's massive. There are guys like last Friday show, 45%, 46% share. There are guys I've talked to TV executives in the UK. They would bite your arm off to get a 20% share in terrestrial television. So we're doing very well under the circumstances. Now I know a lot of people watching entertainment.ie, a lot of people watching, you know, whatever they're looking at. Even if they're looking at this, they'll go, "There's your man off the Late Late Show." It gives me a pain in my face. I get that. That's the nature of being in the public eye. You will have people who think you're all right, and you'll have people who think you're just a drag on you're a wear out. But I have to keep going. And until I get a tap on the shoulder to say, do you know, we've had enough, I motor on. And you have to be passionate, and you have to be curious, and you have to believe in what you do. And I have all of those.
And you've covered a few things, and you've covered running for Chris Evans and stuff, and Terry Wogan, Rest of Soul in the UK on British radio for the BBC a few times as well. Yeah. That seemed like a natural progression for you, and you're obviously very highly thought of over there. Was there ever an inclination to go over there full time? Did you ever actually think about it?
I did flirt with the idea of going to the UK because there was interest. And they needed what was happening. I was filling in for the likes of Simon Mayo, as you say, and Chris Evans, Graham Norton, and Terry Wogan, and the vibe was really strong. And I was looking at it, and there was talk. There was just talk. Now there was no necessarily offer on the table, but there was very strong talk. But to be truthful about it, what happened then was over here in Ireland, things started to going my way, if that makes sense. There was a bit of a wobble for a while, and I was kind of thinking. And things started to go really my way in terms of the Late Late Show was picking up in terms of quality, and I was getting the feeling that I was getting a little better at the job. And then I was on radio, there were moves there, and things started happening. And that's the professional answer in terms of the professional side of it. The personal side was I'm a home bird, and that's the truth of it. Like, I love Ireland. I love going for a few pints in Donoghue's. I love, you know, my brothers, my sisters, we meet a lot, we're close. And more than anything else, my daughters. And the thought of commuting, even if it was across the water, I couldn't. There was nothing big enough to take me away. So I didn't pursue it. Yeah. And I have zero regrets. Is there an element then of the Late Late Show? It's so big. There's no bigger show in Ireland. That even here, if you want to do other things here outside of the radio show, documentaries or wherever, we talked about your interest in American politics. Right. There's an element that you can do that or you can't do that because, you know, you're kind of seen as too big for it. You're hosting the biggest show in the country. I'm never bored because I've always got stuff to do. So I write kids' books now a little bit, and I've got loads of ideas of documentaries I'd love to make. I'd love to travel a bit and film stuff and with programs. So if I'm told or asked, you know, good luck from Montrosia, that peculiar and wonderful planet, I don't think I'd be bored for too long because I've got too much going on in my head. My head is a crazy town. Would you like to do that those kind of Louis Theroux style docu-series where it's natural interactions with people? I would love that. I'd love to do something like that, like Louis Theroux. I did a few travel pieces once for a program called No Frontiers, which used to be on RT, and I got stays with me. I got a great kick out of it. I did Who Do You Think You Are, and I did a documentary on Kennedy, and the No Frontiers. I did a piece on Oxford and a piece on the Normandy landings, and they stayed with me as among my favorite television experiences because I love history. And I loved looking down the camera and bringing history alive, because I always say to kids in schools, when you say, who loves history? And 2 hands go up, and out of 30, and I said, no, you all love history, you just haven't met the right teacher yet. So I'm kind of evangelical about children reading and also being interested in the past and history. So I would love to do some history programs that bring it right back to into the living room or into their phones, just to say, no, don't worry. Every blade of grass sings, every stone has a story to tell. We're going to bring it alive and bring you there, and you'll never be bored again. See, that's it as well. It's the audience, isn't it? You mentioned the kids looking at their phones. People consume media in a completely different way now. Like you can watch the Late Late Show on the player as well. Well, no one's going to watch this on a TV necessarily, but they will, unless they beam it across. I think, I'm not really up to date. But But they'll be watching it, of course.
Yeah.
But this is the change. They'll be watching it on the Dart on the way home, or on the train heading back to Cork, or that's the new world order. That's why I was so happy that you asked me to do this interview, because I think this is I think of will have of more interest than, say, an article in the Irish Times or whatever. This is the new relevance.
Yeah, I interviewed somebody recently, and he said the spoken word is now stronger than the pen, than the written word. Is that something you'd agree with, because it's easier to consume?
I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the spoken word. Listen to me.
Yeah,
you can't get a word in, because I just no. But I mean, I think but the written word, the spoken word is lovely and all, but it means we wouldn't have it without the beauty of the written word. So this is the point I always make to children, is that if you don't read, you won't have words feeding your brain like water feeds a plant. So we start with the books, and then the written word, evolves. And that's what I think. I worry in some ways, like becoming old man River now for a minute. I worry that the people who are going to be in their 20s and 30s soon will have a limited vocabulary, because they're not reading enough.
Or it's all text speak.
That's, if they start, that's like a Black Mirror episode where it's just emojis and I can see it, or they speak like see you later. But I would always defend the written word and books and bookshops and the need to keep bookshops alive in your local town, village, shop, street, because I go to a bookshop like a priest goes to mass. I'm at one. I commune with the books. I just love it. I love the space, the words, the people who go there. I love nerds. They are my people, and I am their friend. And that's why I always say with kids, and even on the toy show this year, that we had a meeting recently. Am I rambling now?
No, not at all.
There was just a kind of adding on from what I've just said there, that they showed me a photograph of a girl who's going to be singing a song. And this girl, I picked up the photograph and I said to the team, I said, "See this girl?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "This girl is what the show is all about this year." She was a particular kind of style of a girl. And the point I was making to them was that the show this year is about the slightly dispossessed kid, but not dispossessed in terms of poverty and all that. We'll always mind them. But I'm talking about the kid who doesn't get picked for the team, the kid who goes home and isn't part of a WhatsApp group or being Snapchatted the way everyone else is, and the kid who isn't told sit beside me on the school bus on the way home. That kid who isn't miserable, incidentally, they just haven't connected with a group, and they go home and they're quite happy doing what they're doing at home. But the parents are going, why don't they have friends? Where are the play dates? But those kids are great. There was a song by Janice Ian called At 17, and it's a really sad song about a girl who's making up lovers on the phone because she doesn't have any. But that's what I said. Think of that song minus 10 or 8 years, and think of that kid, the kid who is beautiful, talented, but just isn't part of anything. They're different and they don't look like everyone else. They're our friends. I just want to try and put a stop to the Kardashianization of the world for those kids who feel they all have to have the same eyebrows and the same hair and the same contours and the same lips. Wouldn't the world be very boring if we all looked very beautiful?
You mentioned the toy show there as well. I watched, I think it was the second or third one that you did. There was a group of us watching it one year, and there was a few girls here as well. One of them said, "I would wife him straight away."
Who were they going to wife?
She wanted to wife you because you. So
is that a verb now?
This is it. It is a verb now.
To wife him.
Speaking of being articulate and all that. I obviously don't read.
No, but the language is evolving anyway. So I accept that. I haven't heard that in that sentence, and I'm intrigued, and I look forward to using it liberally.
But I thought that was interesting because you speak so passionately about kids as well.
Yeah, I love.
And then when you do the toy show, again, we talked about how tough the show is generally. The toy show is a different kettle of fish altogether.
Yeah, it's
but
crazy.
You seem very much at home with that.
Yeah.
And those kind of fun elements to it, and the interactions with the kids and stuff.
Well, I loved being a kid. I loved childhood. I loved the TV programs. I loved the music. I loved the cakes and the sweets and the Tempe bags and I mean, it sounds nostalgic now, but it wasn't nostalgic when it was happening. I loved it. And then as I got older, I realized that kids, and then became a dad, and I just adored that and still do. And I realized that kids, if you listen to them in the back of the car or if you go to a school, they're just nicer than adults. They're just more fun, they're more pleasant, they're less cluttered with preconceived notions, and they're just good eggs. And why wouldn't you want to be, hanging around with them and talking to them? Because here's what I'll say to you. I find really old people and really young people the best in the world. The old people are mistreated by us because we're too arrogant. We don't realize how much information and knowledge they have. They're like repositories of experience, and we treat them like these people who are disposed, and I think it's shocking. And then we have the young people, and we treat them like they're thick or drunk, and actually they're great crack altogether. So they're the two strata of society I like the best, and the rest I take on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, so that kind of middle ground between those, and it's probably the Valentine show, which you mentioned briefly there.
Yeah, the hormone fest.
The first time that show happened, when you walked out to that audience.
I nearly double backed and
yeah,
kept going.
I mean, and that'd be fair enough as well. You're like, this is live. What am I? Anything can happen. It's worse than a kid because they're drunk teenagers or older teenagers or whatever. And what was your first reaction walking out there? And how long did it take you to settle down and go, okay, I need to find the ground here?
I felt like a school principal going into the assembly on the last day of school ever, except that they'd all been for a few drinks beforehand. And I was sober. So that's what it felt like, and they were all. It was like St. Trinian's on the lash, and they were banging the thing. And they come out, and people see me. And what's funny getting older is that people will say, "Oh, can we have a photo?" And I know there's kind of irony in it. Kind of, "Oh, look, it's your man, the creature." And so when you go out to the audience, like they're cheering, but you'd want to be a fool to think they're cheering because they're seeing you. They're cheering in that sense of collective euphoria. Like, if you walk down the streets, if I see what I call the baboons, these are the teenage boys, when the baboons fall off the tree and they see Tubridy, the voices are half breaking and and if there's one girl in the middle of them, I'm in trouble because they're all trying to impress the girl. So they start giving dead arms to each other and they're punching and shouting my name, Tubridy. And when you see all those guys, you just go, that's the collective. They get very excited when they see you. And then you walk into the shop and you'll hear through the shop door, you'll hear, "It is him, it is him, it is him, go and ask him, no, you ask him." So I can hear this, they think now I'm deaf, and I can hear them through the door. I said, I'll have to face into the baboons now. And I walk out the door, and I walk, they go all red, and they start dead arming, and they hide, and then I walk down the street, and then you hear, "Tubridy, your shit."
Lovely, provoking a reaction.
I roar laughing because it happens with these teenage boys, and if you were to talk to them individually, they're like schoolgirls.
It's the hormones collectively.
It's the hormones
clashing, yeah.
But people are so funny, and you walk, like when I walk down the pier or whatever, there's a lovely one where you'll see normally two women, and they're walking along like this together, and they're wearing the athleisure gear, and they're walking, but they're walking.
Speed walking,
very intense, and they're walking, and they are very, very intense walking, and they're talking to each other while they're walking. And then I pass by like this, like in I've got my headphones on, I'm listening to the Beatles or something, I'm just walking along, going, this is all I need is the sea breeze. And these, they're coming the other way, so I'm going like this, and they're coming this way, and they stop and they go, sorry, and then they see me and they go, and they say there, and they go, and then I said to her that that's right, interpreter. Do you want to hear that one? Did you hear what he said? And it's just brilliant, the reactions you get. Other people will nudge, and they think it's very funny. It's very funny being well known.
Do you have to almost be like a politician in a way when talking to people, because that's a certain personality type that can deal with that on a daily basis?
Well, I come from sort of political stock anyway, so it's useful because it must be a gene. I like people. I like meeting. I like shaking hands. I like kissing babies. I like posing for photographs. I don't mind it at all, and that's probably ego and narcissism thrown into the mix. And people will come up and they say, "Could you talk about this issue on your program?" It's like, "Can you fix the drains?" I mean, it is like it is like being in a perpetual state of running for office as soon as I leave my house.
And there's a writing down, you wrote the first book on JFK, and then you wrote the kids' book as well.
Yeah.
Is that a way of kind of de-stressing for you? Is that how you relax?
It's a certain release, but I loved kids' books as a kid. I loved Roald Dahl and Enid Blyton and all these kind of great writers, and I would have loved to have been able to write a book. So it's a release. It's just a release from all of that.
And with the JFK book in particular, that was kind of an interesting one. And I think people who didn't know you, it came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
On JFK's visit to Ireland, and there was lots of Devil Era stuff in there too. That was really interesting facets.
Yeah.
Well, that must have been, but what kind of process was that like to write?
That was torture.
Yeah, because there's a lot of research and stuff
Loads.
involved, but that's not just sitting there
No.
and turning out a story.
Yeah, exactly. It was torture, but I mean, if you can have welcome torture without sounding weird, it was it was just that. But it was a lot of time in the archives which are a brilliant facility in town. National Library, it was nearly living there and doing the Late Late Show and doing a radio show and being a dad. And at one stage, I did say, "Can I get out of this? I can't do it." And I was told, "You're in it. Keep going." And I did, and I'm glad I did, because I actually really like that book. I'm very proud of that book, and it's a little snapshot of a golden time in Ireland.
And would you think about writing an autobiography? Was that initially part of the no?
I wouldn't read it if I wrote it myself, so I wouldn't expect anyone else to read it.
People would obviously be interested.
Yeah, no, I'm weirdly a very private person, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm a very private person in a very public job. So I tend to talk a bit about myself and everything, but I try not to let people in the front door. I think there's only so much of that. So you'll never see pictures of my kids. You barely know their names. You know, it's stuff like that. I tend to you need to keep a bit of yourself for yourself.
How do you find the Irish press with that? It's not as bad as London or as
no.
in terms of paparazzi.
I find the Irish press extremely generous and decent about it. Yeah, I think at first it was all a bit new for me and
He's
for them.
He's a new guy. Yeah.
And it's like, get him. And I was kind of running around the schoolyard going, why are you asking me all these questions? And it took me a while to grow up, actually, and mature, and realize that's their job. So stop being, a douchebag. And I did. And I realized, okay, well, look, you just say to them, lads, I'm not going to talk about that, and I hope you don't mind. And now now we're all good, and it's great. The last 5-10 years, it's been very fair, very reasonable, and I have no. I roar laughing at the interest in my life and my teams. I say teams, the radio and TV guys always tell me that their relatives always ask, so what's the news? What's he like in real life? And what's happening in his real life? And they're all dying to know. So maybe there's a bit of mystery there, but it's my mystery. So sorry about that.
You enjoy it.
It's the little bit I have left of me.
Well, I remember watching an early show of the Late Late Show. I think you were, for you presenting, you were a few shows in or whatever, and it comes to that notion of peers. And Chris Evans was on the show, and you mentioned covering for Chris Evans, and he was very kind. He talked about you and how great you were and how great he thought you were doing the show, and you were very early in the job as well. Yeah, when it comes from your peers, and when it comes from like Chris Evans, who's obviously he does a very similar thing
very generous
in the UK. Yeah. But when it comes from your peers, that must be nice. Is there a bar for feedback? Is it friends and family? Is there still, how do you still want to get better?
It's a very good question, because what you do is you don't want to be surrounded by yes men and women. Because
you see that killing celebrities all the time.
It's desperate, and so I don't have that. I have brothers and sisters who were all born with these really nice wing clippers that they...
Back down to earth.
And that's healthy. We don't really talk about what I do for a living. I've got friends, my 3 or 4 friends are from school, so the last thing they want to talk about is RTE. So we're going to see Paul McCartney in London next month together, and we will not talk about RTE. So you see what I do? I'm surrounding myself with people who I trust and who I love, and that helps matters. But in answer to your question about peers and compliments, no, I can't think of any person who doesn't like to be told something nice about them and what they
do. Especially when they do what you do.
Yeah, and look, exactly. And when you do what I do, there has to be a disproportionate amount of vanity compared to the average person, and confidence, and as I said before, narcissism. It must be, because why else would you do this? Why would you put yourself out there for people to clap and say, well done, or you're awful? I mean, I should probably add sadism after. Sometimes it's not nice, but that's part of the makeup of it. And now at 45, I'm in a much better position to take it all in and process it and deal with it in a much more relaxed way. 10 years ago, I was probably a different creature altogether. And
you've got the kind of like 2FM's gone kind of, I suppose, younger now in terms of that demographic too. Yeah. And do you have kind of the younger DJs or the younger broadcasters looking up to you, asking you for advice?
I don't think they look up to me, to be honest with you, but I keep an eye on the talent around the place to see who's doing well.
Can you spot, from your point of view, who you
think is... I think so. I feel that I can spot it. I'll give you a small example. If you walk into a restaurant or a hotel and you get to the counter and there's 5 people milling around behind the counter, I don't know if you can do this and people watching this can do this, but I can. I'll know within 30 seconds who I want to be dealing with behind that counter. I'll spot it. I'll spot the guy going, oh, I don't want to talk to him. Or you spot the guy going, oh, I'm on my phone, or some other useless head. And you'll spot the one who's going, can I help you? What do you need? How much of it do you need? And when can we fix it? I love fixers. I love fixers. I really do. I hate time wasting. I hate waiting around. I'm really impatient. I want, make it happen. Make it so, as Captain Picard would say. A nice little nerdism there for you from the Enterprise. The Next Generation. I watched every single episode when I was in college, mostly hungover. But the point is that it's I just love quality. I love quality people. And I see it, some of them up and coming, and I see it, but more importantly, who I work with. Once I've got them, I'm safe. I love loyalty, discretion, people who have your back, people who get stuff done, people who sometimes make you sure you don't have to double think everything, so I can just focus on the show. Love that.
There has to be a trust element there as
and
well with your crew.
I've got it on TV and radio at the moment. They're both singing, and that makes life really beautiful.
It's a psychology element to it as well when you're getting a guest coming out, be it wherever it is, you're getting somebody over the phone and being able to read somebody fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And go, okay, I can kind of have an idea how this interview's going to go.
Yeah, I meet every guest on the Late Late Show before the show. On the night. I'd always ask them to come in early so I can say hello to them, to look them in the whites of the eyes. And you'll know pretty much within 30 seconds what class of interview you're going to have. I could probably meet somebody and say, and go to the producer and say, you know that 15 minutes we've allotted to that person? And they'll say, yeah. I said, make it 10.
It's just not going to work.
It's not happening. And I'll say, do you know that other person over there I just met? Yeah. And you know the 12 minutes they have? And they'll say, yeah. I said, make it 18.
It's interesting as well, looking at the rise of certain celebrities, how they've started on the show and kind of the last appearance on the show. Like, so somebody like Conor McGregor, who I've talked about with you on the radio.
He's your guy, yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I think the last time I did your show was before the Mayweather fight.
Yeah, it was.
And I said, look, I think you've actually got somewhat of an understanding of mixed martial arts as well, or you're open to it, and some people just don't. And I said, in terms of athletic prowess, I think Conor McGregor is one of the best athletes we've ever produced. That wasn't my audience at all, Ryan. I found out the guys outside the studio were like, you haven't gotten one positive text.
Yeah, but you also you have to remember you were on RT Radio 1. Yeah. And that would not be an MMA natural demographic fit.
Not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there would be whereas if you had had that conversation on another station, 2FM, 102, 104, people would have probably listened with different ears. But the reason I would have been keen to have you on was because I believe that the guy is a phenomenon. And I believe that the MMA world is a phenomenon. And if we choose to ignore it without talking about it, somebody who knows about it like you, how are we going to learn? We could choose to ignore it and say they're all violent and awful, but then you're living in blissful ignorance. We have to air it. It's like it comes right back to how we began our conversation.
Yeah, you want to actually have the conversation.
Simple discussion about it. Yeah, and then describe it, explain it. Why are all these people spending a fortune to go to Vegas for 5 days? Spending their hard-earned cash like that, it costs a lot of money to go there. They're not doing it because I don't believe they're doing it because they're bloodthirsty barbarians. They believe that this is a sport, that he's their guy, and that it's worth putting a lot of money into pursuing him across the ocean.
It's almost that Italian 90 effect as well, but it's just singular because it's Conor McGregor. Yeah. And so you put the Ali comparison to people as well, not to harp on too much about McGregor, but you put the Ali comparison to people as well, and they're up in arms. And you point out Ali's daughters have said that he deeply reminds them of their father. Whether you agree with that or not, their observation might mean more.
Well, it's funny because I interviewed McGregor the first time, and I was going, "Who is this guy?" And I said to him,
"It was with Carl Pendred." Yeah, I remember that.
I said to McGregor at one point, "If Muhammad Ali was born in Dublin, he'd sound like you, because he has this natural flow of vocabulary. Now, whether you like it or not is moot." But it's intriguing.
And he's captivating people, yeah. He's our Tom Brady, he's our LeBron James. Like or lump it, whether you like him or not, he is at the moment.
As I say, he's a phenomenon, and I don't know how long more it'll last, but you can't avoid him.
Okay, so I want to talk about the book before you head off.
Sure.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You're going to do a signing as well in Eason's.
Yeah.
So what's that going to be like? We're going to bring kids along, obviously, as well.
Yeah.
That's a massively sweet element to it.
Well, the book is called The First Christmas Jumper and the Sheep Who Changed Everything. And I was suggesting to me you should write a book about the Christmas jumper because I'm Johnny Christmas Jumper Pants. And
there's always bets about what you're going to wear for the entire show.
Yeah. And I said, well, all jumpers begin with the sheep. And I had just interviewed Hillary Clinton in the Marion Hotel in town. So, and as I was writing, I said, well, the sheep has to be female and a sheep who dares to be different. And I went, I'm going to call her Hillary. So it's Hillary the sheep. And she's got a multicolored fleece and all the other sheep are boring and the same. And this is back to what I was saying about the kids. Don't be another boring sheep in the field looking like everyone else. Be the one that's different. You can be alone, but not lonely. And she just makes lists. And this book is full of the most awful jokes and awful puns and cute drawings. Like, she loves Christmas. Her favorite Christmas song is Feliz Navidad. Cue laughter. She likes little.
It took a second, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, but are you with me now? Okay, sorry about that. She loves Little Town of Bethlehem. And she loves Joy to the Wool. And her favourite food is like Pronitoros. She gets so excited when she sees Santa, she feels it's like meeting the Bleatles. And all the elves are part of the Elvish Presley choir. So the point of all these awful puns is that if you're a dad or a mum and you're reading the story to your kids stories are really quite boring sometimes. And this one allows the kid, first of all, the parent can have that sort of Shrek, like, okay, that's working for me. I know what the Bleatles is, a gag, it's funny. But if the kid goes, why are you laughing? I want the parent to say, because he's done something there with the Bleat and the Beatles. And the kid then says, what are the Beatles? And then the parent goes, oh, let me show you. And now we've got this gateway thing. There's another point in the book where one sheep says to the farmer, oh, nice one, Sherlock. And I want the kids to go, what's a Sherlock? And the parent go, oh, right, Arthur Conan Doyle wrote this. And suddenly, oh, you might want to watch Benedict Cumberbatch playing him on TV. So it's just trying to bounce kids into
that must have
more
been
curiosity.
Fun to come up, but that sounds like it was super fun to come up.
Well, it's
with.
just fun. I just felt that kids, parents they spend a long day at work. They have to read a story, and I wanted to give them a story that they could just have a good chuckle at themselves as well as with the kids. So it's not just, and then the unicorn flew to the sky. Boring. No, I want bad jokes. I want dad jokes. I want sheep puns, and that's what happened here.
So before we let you go, one
Yes.
final question. You mentioned Hillary Clinton there. Can we see making another political or proper political documentary pre or post Late Late Show?
Yeah,
while you're doing the Late Late Show, is that a goal?
I don't think it's going to happen as I'm hosting it.
Yeah.
But I think that
It's too much for workload.
Yeah, it's too much really. As soon as that microphone is dropped, it has to be a drop. Better be a good show that night. But what I'm trying to say, as soon as I hang up my suit for the last time on the Late Late Show, whenever that might be, I'll be straight into, I think, the documentary world. I don't know where or with whom or about what, but I've got a heap of ideas and I'm good to go.
Brilliant, Ryan. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, good luck with that.